C.W.A. Scott, the world-famous pilot and aviation editor of the News Chronicle, and his equally celebrated co-pilot, Mr. T. Campbell Black, will tell you the story of their epoch-making flight.
Tom, do you remember Milton Hall on the 20th of October last? We started in the Melbourne Centenary race on our first leg to Baghdad, and how over the major portion of Europe, or at least until we got to Budapest, we saw nothing. Bucharest, we had a little better weather, and then from there to some point in Syria, we again flew blind, and then went on to a point somewhere north of Baghdad, which neither of us knew, and eventually landed in some place, Kirkuk, where we refueled and flew into Baghdad. Then after Baghdad, instead of following the straight line as shown on the map to Allahabad, we went down to Jask on the eastern side of the Gulf of Bandar Abbas, and then northeastward to Karachi, slightly to the south of Jodhpur, and into Allahabad, where we landed on our second afternoon to refuel. Then after 35 minutes on the ground at Allahabad, we started on the third leg of our flight to Melbourne between Allahabad and Singapore. Now, this line here indicates what is the recognized air route to Singapore. But we had to take a chance to save 200 miles, and we flew down to a place here called False Point, and straight over the Bay of Bengal to Singapore, 1,400 miles over the sea. Do you remember, Tommy, what bad weather we had there in the Bay of Bengal? Yes. It's a thing we won't forget for a long time. But we managed, even leaving Allahabad 2 hours before daylight, to arrive in Singapore just as dawn was breaking, in order that we could continue our fourth leg of the flight, actually into Australia on our third day of daylight. And we left Singapore just after daybreak on the third day of daylight, flew very close to the coast of Borneo, over the Flores Sea to Timor Kupang, or to Timor Island, slightly to the north, actually, of Timor Kupang itself, and then on our last 570 miles into Port Darwin, over the Timor Sea itself. And halfway over the Timor Sea itself, just when we were seeing our goal of Darwin almost in sight, one of our motors faded away on us, and although we were in rather precarious position, just below the clouds, only a height of about 1,000 feet above the sea, we managed to get into Darwin on our one good motor and landed in Darwin 52 hours out from Milton Hall in Sussex, such a long way away. Then, of course, the trouble was whether we could get to Melbourne to complete the flight on our one remaining existing good motor. Anyhow, we managed to get the dud motor sufficiently active again to take off from Darwin, and we flew by night beyond Cloncurry here to Charleville, where we landed at about 9 o'clock in the morning. Again in Charleville, we managed to get our one good motor sufficiently active again to take off from Charleville to fly on the one good engine down to Melbourne, completing our flight from Milton Hall to Melbourne in 2 days, 23 hours. In retrospect, I suppose it was the most momentous time of our lives. It was full of incident, and yet I suppose, in retrospect again, we thoroughly enjoyed it.